Be a part of the best pro wrestling podcast today by supporting the Going In Raw Patreon. You can enjoy access to the live taping of the show, exclusive merchandise, and patron-only episodes, and so much more. Support Going In Raw today. Click the link in the description.
Hey friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
So with every title on Raw being defended Sunday at Clash of Champions, we got to thinking, what were the best championship title matches in pro wrestling history like ever?
Not the most memorable, not the biggest, the best. We're talking 5-star matches. Not Hogan awkwardly body slamming Andre, not Brock taking CENA to Suplex Cities for his 4th WWE title reign.
We're talking top-notch matches, the absolute best of the best, which also just happen to be for championship titles.
So here you go, here are the 10 finest championship matches in pro wrestling.
Shinsuke Nakamura versus AJ Styles. Okay, so full disclosure, this list does not include matches from Japan and Mexico. Simply put, the list would be really long if we did. Plus, we don't know a hell of a lot about anything except for shit that happens here in America.
But one match in New Japan in particular sticks out as particularly relevant today, and that was when the King of Strong Style took on the then leader of the Bullet Club, AJ Styles, for Nakamura's IWGP Intercontinental Championship at Wrestle Kingdom 10.
The match is a masterpiece, a seamless blend of wrestling styles between two guys who know how to not just make themselves look like $1 million, but how to make their opponents look great too.
The match is just one in a long line of great New Japan matches. The level of talent in the company is top-notch, partially thanks to a 2014 deal with Ring of Honor, which sees various talents commingling on various shows.
But this match is significant to us in a few obvious ways. For one thing, it's a match that WWE fans may get to see again on the grandest stage of them all. Both men came to the WWE earlier this year, and they both found themselves skyrocketing in popularity as soon as they arrived. AJ is, of course, now the WWE World Champion, and Nakamura is the current NXT champ.
So it's not out of the question that we'll see AJ versus Shinsuke once again, hopefully at WrestleMania 33, because we plan on being there.
We're going to be there. We're going to watch it.
Yeah, live, in person.
Yeah. Sasha Banks versus Bayley. The bar set in the modern era of women's wrestling by performers like Lita and Trish Stratus was sent into the stratosphere by Bayley and Sasha Banks on NXT's first TakeOver Brooklyn card in August 2015.
With Sasha set to debut on the main roster, the culmination of the various stories they were involved with during their years in NXT came to a head in this match, and it was a brilliant one. With spots we hadn't seen before anywhere, and storytelling on par with HBK versus Undertaker and Austin versus Hitman.
And the payoff, which saw Bayley finally claim NXT Women's Championship gold, led to the biggest crowd pop of the night, maybe even ever in NXT. It completely overshadowed the Finn Balor-Kevin Owens ladder match that main event of that night, which was really good in itself. In reality, the Sasha-Bayley bout, though, was the real main event of that night.
Which was obvious to anyone including NXT head honcho The Game Triple H, who booked the very first women's Iron Man match to main event the following NXT TakeOver.
That grueling 30-minute bout was another excellent showing for the two, but that first epic encounter should be remembered for what it was, simply one of the best championship matches of all time.
And at the end, when all the 4 horsemen were in the ring, it got me a little misty.
I know, it hit me in the feels as well.
Yeah.
The Hardys versus Edge and Christian versus the Dudleys. We almost put the Triangle Ladder Tag Team match between the Dudleys, Hardys, and Edge and Christian from WrestleMania 2000 on here because you can speak personally to its greatness, Larson.
Yeah, I was there. And in all honesty, it's the only match I remember from the card. But the image of Edge spearing Jeff Hardy while brother Nero was dangling 20 feet above the ring during their second TLC match at WrestleMania 17 is one of the most indelible and iconic in all of wrestling.
And that spot was just one of several insane bumps all 6 competitors took during the course of the match. Jeff Hardy delivered a swanton bomb off a huge ladder, and Bubba Ray and Matt Hardy were both dumped through a stack of tables. This match was quite possibly the most Attitude Era match of the entire Attitude Era.
And actually, this match might not even be the best match on the WrestleMania X7 card. Despite the awkward heel turn at the end, the Rock Stone Cold match that main evented the show could easily have been on this list as well. Actually, why isn't it?
2 words. Awkward heel turn for Stone Cold Steve Austin. Sami Zayn versus Neville. Sami Zayn's almost 2-year journey from being signed to NXT to becoming NXT champion was fraught with obstacle after obstacle. The underdog from the underground lived up to his gimmick as his championship quest was thwarted time after time.
So once his time in NXT was coming to an end and his main roster debut seemed imminent, it was time for Sammy to finally have his run with the NXT title, and his run would start after a stellar 5-star match against Neville.
The match was a total vehicle for Zayn. During one particularly dramatic sequence, with the ref knocked out and Neville prone, Zayn had to choose whether to use the NXT Championship as a weapon to finish Neville and ensure he claimed gold, or to take the high road he never strayed from and try for the honest win.
After an excruciating few minutes where he was torn between the two choices, he finally took the high road and got the win clean. It was brilliant storytelling and made his victory all the more satisfying.
The crowd went ballistic upon Sammy winning, and he was congratulated by the NXT locker room, who came out to celebrate with him, including new NXT arrival and Zayn's best friend, Kevin Owens,
who proceeded to powerbomb the living shit out of Sami Zayn, setting them two down the path of being hated rivals even to this day.
Right now, Sammy is basically treading water in the WWE, but take it from us, he's going to be huge one day, probably sooner than later.
Yeah.
John Cena versus CM Punk. The build-up to this match is probably one of, if not my favorite wrestling storylines ever. With his WWE contract set to expire the day after the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, CM Punk won a triple threat match to become the #1 contender to John Cena's WWE Championship.
The following week on Raw, Punk dropped his infamous pipe bomb promo where he dubbed Cena an ass kisser, Triple H a doofus, called himself the best in the world, and threatened to defend the WWE title in various promotions around the world after he defeated the leader of C Nation. This was actually the storyline that got me watching wrestling again after kind of not paying much attention to it for a couple of years.
So come the night of Money in the Bank 2011, the wrestling world was abuzz as to whether Punk would actually walk out on the WWE if he were to win the title, and what devious machinations Vince McMahon might resort to in order to keep his belt in his company.
But with a rabid Chicago crowd cheering feverishly for their hometown hero, Punk managed to defeat Cena in a 30-minute classic, which saw Vince and Johnny Ace attempt a Montreal Screwjob-esque ending in an attempt to keep the strap off the straight-edge superstar.
The show closed with Punk, after blowing a kiss at a shocked McMahon, escaping with his newly won title through the crowd in one of the most electric and unpredictable moments in wrestling history.
And sure, the rest of the storyline was kind of bungled, with Punk returned to TV a couple weeks later just to start a program against Kevin Nash of all people, but nothing could take away from that unforgettable moment when Punk became the hottest wrestler in the entire industry.
Could you imagine if they let him go to New Japan to defend the title, or TNA to defend the title, Ring of Honor to defend the title? That would have been amazing, but no. Rey Mysterio Jr. versus Eddie Guerrero. Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero had a wealth of classic matches against each other and against innumerable other opponents in their heyday.
And although their big WWE feud, which saw the custody of Rey's son be decided in the latter match, was as epic as the movie it was evidently inspired by, Over the Top.
Epic film.
This 1997 title versus mask match at Halloween Havoc was their best.
Rey in particular proved why he was one of the best cruiserweights ever. Granted, his run in the WWE was highlighted by his undersized underdog storylines and high-flying moveset, but watching this again reminded me of just how quick and fast he was back in the day.
It's obvious that his pace of action influenced matches we see these days featuring grapplers like Ricochet, Will Ospreay, and the Young Bucks.
What also stands out is how much heat Eddie Guerrero had on him back then with the crowd. And remember, this was the WCW Cruiserweight division, which never got a lot of promo time and was really just meant to be simply a showcase of high-flying, quick-moving wrestlers from around the world. And despite all that, Eddie was more capable of getting more heel heat than anyone in the main event scene.
And of course, like with everything, WCW didn't know what they had and lost Eddie to WWE a few years later, where he main evented WrestleMania and stole every show he was on.
Cheat to win. AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe versus Christopher Daniels. There was a time back in the mid-aughts, not long after TNA was created by Jeff Jarrett, that it became synonymous with groundbreaking pro wrestling.
Thanks to the likes of AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, and Christopher Daniels, the company's X Division became the proving ground for TNA's homegrown talent. The matches for the X Division title more often than not eclipsed the company's world title, which seemed to be around simply to satiate the egos of marquee TNA names like Sting, Christian, and of course, Mr. Slapnuts himself, Jeff Jarrett.
In short, fans of wrestling preferred X Division matches, and nowhere was this more evident than at Unbreakable in 2005, which saw Joe, Daniels, and Styles put on a classic 5-star match for the X Division title.
The three seamlessly blended their contrasting styles to put on a perfect triple threat match and showed why, at the time, TNA looked like it could be a real threat to the WWE, at least in the category of new talent.
Obviously, TNA was never a real threat to the WWE, but thanks to their time in TNA, guys like the current WWE World Champ AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, and Bobby Roode honed their craft and are now killing it in the big leagues.
And word is that TNA's latest homegrown talent, Broken Matt Hardy, who has put on some revolutionary matches of his own in TNA, like the Final Deletion, is being looked at by WWE as a potential acquisition once his TNA contract is up.
Now, it remains to be seen if young talent like Broken Matt Hardy or Brother Nero has what it takes to survive or even thrive in the WWE, but time will tell.
How many comments do you think we're going to get on that one?
It doesn't matter, Larson. I can always delete. Randy Savage versus Ricky Steamboat. In the illustrious career of the Macho Man, this match for the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 3 is undoubtedly the cream of the crop, Larson.
Stealing the show at what was, at that point, the largest wrestling event ever, Savage and Steamboat put on one of the most intricately orchestrated bouts wrestling had ever seen. In fact, the Macho Man scripted out basically every spot in the match beforehand, and after 19 near falls, Steamboat pinned Savage, ending his year-plus reign as IC champ.
That's some Mecha Santa level kickout skills there, Larson. The match launched Randy towards superstardom. Just a year later, he claimed the WWF World Championship at WrestleMania 4 and began a year-long reign before dropping the belt to, surprise, surprise, Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 5, brother.
While the Hogan-Andre bout that headlined WrestleMania 3 is possibly more iconic, it was, as a wrestling match, pretty lousy.
Yeah.
Hogan was never much of a ring technician, and at that point in his storied career, Andre was well past his prime.
How much would you love to be a fly in the wall when Macho Man was explaining his intricate bout with Ricky Steamboat?
It'd been great.
Hey, okay, listen here. This is what we're gonna do. Okay, listen up, Ricky. All right, and then like a half hour later, he's still there explaining.
Yeah, he's like, ooh, yeah, for this fall, really take your time. Really build up ring psychology. Oh, yeah!
Razor Ramon versus Shawn Michaels. The latter match is a fairly common affair these days across many promotions, but back in 1994, that wasn't really the case.
In fact, the only taped ladder match in WWE history occurred 2 years before the epic encounter for the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 10 was between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart in 1992. And that match was taped, but never saw the light of day prior to a 2007 WWE ladder match DVD.
The origins of the ladder match are a bit murky, but according to Internet, they date back to 1972 in Stampede Wrestling. It was a ladder match to get a wad of cash. But they weren't introduced to the world until HBK and Razor Ramon, each of whom had their own IC titles, thanks to an HBK suspension, had to climb a ladder to snatch both belts and become the top only IC champ.
It wasn't the high spot fest a ladder match later became, when names like the Dudleys, the Hardys, and Edge and Christian took ladder matches to the extreme, but instead it was a slower, more brutal form of ladder match.
And in the end, the bad guy went over, laying claim to the title Pat Patterson first won in a completely made-up match in Rio de Janeiro in 1979.
Wrestling is weird.
Yeah, they made up a belt that he unified with the North American title to make it the Intercontinental. He even made up the belt. Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat. The greatest rivalry in all of wrestling culminated in a 30-minute bout at Wrestle War 89 between Ric Flair and NWA World Heavyweight Champion Ricky Steamboat.
Prior to this, Flair and Steamboat had a series of matches that are widely considered to be some of the best the business had ever seen until then.
Steamboat had won the title off Flair in a classic match at the Chi-Town Rumble earlier that year. He successfully defended the title a month later and then again in a 2 out of 3 falls match, but not without controversy. Because Flair's foot was on the bottom rope when Ricky picked up the final pin, so the blow-off match was booked for NWA Wrestle War.
And just to avoid the possibility of another dusty finish, a panel of judges were present just in case the two went to the 1-hour time limit. Wrestling legends Terry Funk, Pat O'Connor, and the hooker himself, Lou Thez, were the judges for the contest, but they ended up being unnecessary because the drama-filled bout lasted 30 minutes and found Flair reclaiming his NWA title.
There have been rivalries over the years that could be considered on par with Flair Steamboat, but none coupled drama and in-ring performance quite like Flair Steamboat.
And the drama didn't end there. Judge Terry Funk beat the shit out of Flair after interrupting his post-match interview, which led to a feud between those two.
Which led to this terrifying still of Ric Flair. Look at, he's such an unnatural color of human. He's like an odd purple.
He looks like a creative character.
He literally does, that's right. Anyways, those were the best championship title matches we could come up with. Let us know what you guys think in the comments if you disagree or if you have any of your own that you really loved.
Yeah, please do that.
Yeah, be sure to check out other stuff. We have all sorts of 2K17 stuff coming up this week, and we've got some great interviews with AJ Styles and Sasha Banks that went up on our channel yesterday, so go check them out.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.